feared and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and so jiggle my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Chasing the Pennant podcast. We are back to chasing pennants here. We have taken a bit of a hiatus, and in that hiatus we have done much discussion, and we've come up with a new way that we're going to kind of give these shows to you. So bear with us through some of this. Hopefully you enjoy some of the changes that we made. But to introduce some of these changes, I am your host Shane, and I am joined with only tonight one additional co-host, and Andrew Santangelo. Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to get back at after this. Like you said, we kind of had a little vacation, I guess you can call it, after the season. Not much going on, but I'm ready to get back in it. And let's face it, this could be one of the most important off seasons for the Phillies in a long time, considering what's at stake.
I feel like we've entered 3 straight off seasons of the most important off season in Philadelphia Phillies history, certainly our lifetime. And in this one, and another interesting one. Obviously last year we couldn't have predicted the COVID season that we kind of had to endure. But again, it's another season where we're going in with revenues not knowing what owners are going to be able to bring in, and we're certainly dealing with one right now in John Middleton, who seems to be erring on a side of caution that we're not really seeing that extent of elsewhere, whether it be across baseball or across any of the major 4 sports. So I think the first question that we should get into here is, are the Philadelphia Phillies in more financial trouble than what they let on at this point?
I go back and forth with this because I understand it's easy for us to say John Middleton's a billionaire and everything, and obviously he took a hit this year with everything going on, just like everyone else did. But then it's also tough to sit back and see Dodgers extend bets. You see all the other things going on, and you see big-time head coaches and Alex Cora and AJ Hinch get signed as well, and they're not cheap deals. And you see cross sports here, but you see the Sixers put out and get Doc Rivers, and then they go out and get Daryl Morey as well, which I think combined they're paying those 2 guys I think like $16 million. I read. So as far as we know, what we hear, Middleton is pretty much close to the Sixers there in that sense, and so it's tough to read. But the thing I want to touch on is you have $60 million coming off the books, so it's not like, I understand that you're losing money in terms of you lost the fans and everything, but you're also in a way gaining some of that back to spend this offseason by gaining that $60 million back in terms of losing Jake Arrieta, JT as of now his contract's gone, and then Gregorius as well, and so in that sense, I understand what happened, and obviously, you are at less money than what you were used to last year, but are they as bad as they're trying to make it out to be? I have a hard time believing that.
I do as well. You mentioned the Sixers ownership group, and one thing that we can kind of gather from Josh Harris and his entire partnership there is their income, their revenue stream comes from beyond that of what the 76ers bring them. They have a multitude of business endeavors that will continue to line their pockets, and probably makes things a little bit easier for them to go ahead and commit $16 million to front office positions at this point. John Middleton, as far as we know, his sole line of work and sole line of income at this point is this organization. It is just the Philadelphia Phillies. So to lose on your bottom line there hurts him professionally, hurts him personally. So much so that an article came out through Philly Voice. This was in September, so this wasn't even at this point to the end of the season. I don't know that the final number's been discussed, but he put in an additional $100 million, him and his group, to help keep things afloat. Now, again, we talk about a guy who is worth billions with a B. At this point, are we to trust his business mind to sit there and understand, I'm going to sit here and invest some of my own money and some of our group's own money into this because we believe in what we're going to put out on this field, and we believe in the trajectory of this franchise. Because at this point, if he's pumping the brakes on all of this, which he's terrified to extend an offer to Didi Gregorius because holy shit, he might accept it. The JT Realmuto thing has been an absolute nightmare. At this point, it doesn't seem like he believes in what he's about to put out there. Are we in for an absolutely horrendous offseason and several off seasons to come?
Honestly, I hate to be negative, but I'm starting to try to embrace that way because, again, he's given us no reason. And I was talking to my brothers about this, but obviously he went out and signed Harper and he signed Wheeler, so that's like the counterpoint. But my point is, to go off that, is they've given us no reason to trust them. They've given us no reason to believe them, and they've given us no reason to expect anything to happen because of the issues we talked about throughout the season. It's the same main issues over and over again, and they try to cover it up with the big signing, which, don't get me wrong, we all love Harper and that needed to happen. But then they try to go off, oh, look what we did. We signed Harper. We went out and spent money, so we're good. We're set for whenever until Harper's done. And that's where I think they kind of misled themselves almost. And you mentioned him being a businessman. I think the one flaw he might, kind of flaw in terms of business he has, not necessarily as a person, but he's got a soft spot, I think. And I think that's what you're starting to see here. And it goes to show how good of a person he is. But in terms of the business is where it becomes a little bit of an issue. And it's the way he speaks as well. And it kind of comes across that way. Taking off what he said about when Klentak stepped down, he mentions, he's been evaluating Klentak since he stepped in, and he's been disappointed for 3 or 4 years now. So that tells me he's such a good person. He doesn't want to fire a guy or get rid of a guy. And same thing with McPhail. Like, in reality, you kind of hear it in McPhail's press conference as well. His quote was, if they find someone worthwhile, he'll step down and let that guy take over.
Right.
So to me, that means they have a disconnection there, and Middleton just doesn't want to either admit that he was wrong in hiring those two, or he doesn't have enough courage or whatever to kind of get rid of them, and he's trying to wait and see how it plays out. And you kind of see it with, you didn't want to get rid of Klentak, even though you admitted that he was doing a bad job for multiple years now, and then instead of getting rid of him, you move him move him to a different spot in the front office, and you keep him on the books as well. So to me, as a businessman, it's kind of like that's where he kind of just has that soft spot with people and stuff, and keeps his relationships and everything. And I think that is almost the biggest issue here that we're seeing with him at time to time with some of the stuff he's doing. In terms of the money situation, maybe we overestimated how much money he was making from his other businesses, and maybe that's coming into effect as well. And his other businesses are probably going to take a hit as well, which then will cause him to lose money too. So I don't know that situation, but I just think that he kind of comes too close to, and that sounds weird to say, but in terms of that, is he doesn't have enough courage to get rid of people.
Yeah, which kind of brings us towards this next one here. And when you take a look, and we hear this across the board in Philadelphia sports, is it a management problem? Is it a coaching problem? Or is it a roster problem? When we take a look at a front office here, you use the word, disconnected or disjointed, one of the two. And there does seem to be that, and that seems to come from John Middleton. And I think when you express, him as being a nice guy and a guy who who clearly cares for the personnel that he brings in here, and he's not looking to cost anyone their livelihood. The thing that echoed most to me in what you said, though, was the latter part of what you were saying, was that he doesn't want to look like an idiot for giving the incorrect people power and then allowing them to keep that power. And I think nothing more says this than keeping a person on staff with whom you said you've been disappointed in, but not disappointed enough that he's going to go completely away, because now your assistant general manager, Ned Rice, is going to step in, and who do you think is going to be his first call and conversation points in terms of roster construction and the way to kind of operate things in the general manager's position? He's going to talk to Matt Klentak. So when you take a look at this Philadelphia Phillies team, we understand that there seems to be a problem at seemingly every level. But right now, is this strictly a John Middleton problem? And could this be fixed with John Middleton saying, I'm going to write a blank check to my future GM, and I'm going to allow him to write blank checks with whom he believes needs to best serve this? Or maybe it genuinely just needs to be, we have to get a guy that is going to see a vision that of John Middleton has and be able to execute it in a financially and fiscally responsible way. What do you think is the problem here?
I think it's, for going off that second part real quick, if that is the case, it's kind of weird and sad to think about how we'd almost have to go quote unquote Moneyball style in a spot like Philadelphia. I mean, I understand your point. In a major market, you almost got to play Moneyball in a sense, if you want to call it that. But I think the biggest issue here would be, I have a hard time putting it mainly on Middleton, but the fact that, like we said, he can't get rid of that guy he hired in the past, that's really the issue. I think Andy MacPhail is the real issue here, and I think because of the relationship he already built with Matt Klentak, he comes in, so he automatically signs Klentak as GM. Middleton relied on his past history more than the way the game was changing to kind of come in and step in. And I think that's the big issue here is until Andy goes, I don't think you're going to see much of a difference, because I think he's still relying on his old ways. And like you mentioned, now you got Rice coming in, and who's his first call going to be? It's going to be Klentak and MacPhail, because that's who they've been working with and who they've been paired together with. And this is going to be Rice's first GM stint, it seems like it's going to be right now. And like you said, it's his first time in a business, so he's going to look for people who have done it before and answers, and he's going to turn to Klentak, who's still in that position. And I think, and that's where it comes, and it's tough here it's tough to keep placing it on the owner of the team, because like they only do so much, and that's why I think it is more on MacPhail and his inability as well to go past his past relationships. Because as MacPhail, he's had a chance to fire Klentak just as much as Middleton's had the chance to fire both of them as well. So like in a way, it's also on him. So I kind of put more blame on MacPhail the last 2 years and even into this offseason, because going back to this comment, that was also a weird thing to say, because if you're ready to be done, why not retire?
Why are you here?
And he doesn't know why he's here. He doesn't know what he wants to do. So if you're really that confused, if you're really that unsure, if you want to keep going, retire. You'd be doing the organization what's best too. Because if you're not sure, you're not going to be making the right decisions. You're not going to be putting in your full effort, and you got to, in reality, just retire like a player would. And yeah, it's going to stink, but it's what it is now if you're not sure if you want to keep going with that business. So I'm going to go, it's more of a MacPhail problem than Middleton.
I think so. And I've run through this scenario time and time again in my head. And at different points, seemingly in a 24-hour span, I will have blamed all three of them, none of them, and then all three of them again. It is absurd to sit here and watch the reality TV show that is the Philadelphia Phillies front office. But you mentioned something that I think is really important here. It is completely evident that Andy MacPhail's heart is not in this, and to me that comes from a guy who knows maybe he doesn't want to walk away from the game. Maybe he doesn't want to be in Philadelphia, but he's still cashing a paycheck. And John Middleton says, you got to stay. I'm not going to pay you to leave. Just like I'm not going to pay Matt Klentak to go away. This is a conspiracy thing that you and I kind of talked about a bit. And you explained most of the bones of this conspiracy theory here, but I want to kind of allow you the opportunity to kind of dive into why you believe Matt Klentak is actually still, in fact, the general manager.
Yeah, so my conspiracy theory is Matt Klentak is still the general manager of the Philadelphia Phillies. The reason why that comes into play is, first off, let's take in, again, their past relationship from the Baltimore days, where, honestly, they had some success, but not full success. And then he brings him into Philadelphia. Again, Middleton claims the last couple of years, Klentak hasn't been doing a good job, but we're going to keep him anyway. So now MacPhail has 1 year left. He doesn't know if he wants to be here, so they're just going to ride out the 1 year. And obviously, the fans, rightfully so, were coming out with a lot of backlash and all that. And I think they just had enough of the backlash. So they said, all right, Klentak, it's time to step down or resign. They agreed to it because, in reality, he's still there. because you have a GM who they apparently have all the confidence in the world in this Ned Rice guy. And don't get me wrong, we have no
Never
idea.
done the job.
Yeah, we have no idea what he's going to be. He's never done the job, so how can you really have that much confidence in, like we already opened with, a very important offseason with what's at stake and some stars leaving or whatnot? And in reality, the reason why I believe it as well is then Andy McPhail comes out in his press conference a few weeks ago and says, I can't even say it without laughing, but he says, we're not in position to interview anyone because we're afraid that they're not going to want to uproot in the middle of a pandemic.
When you're right across the street at the Wells Fargo Center and a comfy little office over there, the entire 76ers front office has been rebuilt.
Yeah, and not only the front office, but an entire coaching staff as well, because Doc Rivers is out there signing a new assistant coach every day, it feels like. So
that's very true.
That happens, and why else would you be afraid that no one's going to want to? Because there's multiple counters to that. First off, anyone's going to want to move, because you don't even have to go with the top guys. You ask any assistant GM that's out there whether they want a promotion to a full-on GM spot in a huge market in a historic franchise. You're going to tell me they don't want to uproot into the...
Sorry, can't. I want to stay in Tampa Bay.
Right? I want to stay.
Might be splitting half my time in Canada.
It just doesn't make any sense. And then the second counter to that as well is, even if they don't, we have these things called Skype, Zoom. I mean, you just keep going on and on, where first off, you can do the interview from there. Second off, throughout the off season, you can call and do all that, because it's not like you don't meet with every free agent in the middle of the off season to kind of sign them, unless if it's a high star guy. Like everything else is done on phones with the agent. So everything that GM can do, he can do that sitting in Citizens Bank Park, or he can do that sitting in Russia if he wants to be over there. So that just doesn't make sense in multiple ways. So I came down to it where they kept him in the organization because they said you can finish out this year under Andy McPhail, and then we'll move on after that. So I think Matt Klentak is still the GM of the Phillies in disguise.
Which brings me to the point that John Middleton is an absolute fraud. This man, to sit here and go through the levels of, because I believe that there is entirely too much merit for this conspiracy theory to be just a conspiracy theory. I believe this is essentially what it is, and I don't know how either of the two of them can go ahead and do their job to any capacity, especially with one of them not even having a legitimate title, just seemingly having a mysterious role worth nearly $7 million a year. I don't know how either of them can go to work and feel comfortable and confident in the decisions that they have access and authority to make. I think this is a John Middleton problem, which brings me to another level of this. And you've mentioned it several times at this point, that the McPhail interview. I mentioned earlier the John Middleton interview. Every time the three of these gentlemen open up their mouths, I feel less and less confident about Philadelphia Phillies baseball. I'm ready to sit here and take on any other team and start talking about them. I'm willing to talk about things not even sports related, just to not think about what I just witnessed in these interviews. The condescension, the outright lies, the defensiveness for seemingly no fucking reason. Half the time these guys are getting lollipop layup questions and they can't even answer them. They have to steer it to another thing that nobody gives a damn about that had nothing to do with the question. Every time the three of them open up their mouths. So we talk about this all-important offseason, which at this point, if you sign the face of baseball like Bryce Harper 2 years ago, every offseason is the most important offseason you're about to go through. Because every year you need to be working towards getting the face of baseball a World Series ring. That's not happening right now with John Middleton. That's certainly not happening with Andy McPhail. It was never going to happen with Matt Klentak. Every time they open up their mouths, we get less and less excited about Philadelphia Phillies baseball. At this point, if you had to ballpark it, and this is just a quick tidbit, a side note, we didn't write notes on this, but if you had to ballpark your level of excitement versus your level of concern, you got a scale of 0 is concern and 10 is excitement. Where are you on this scale?
I'm at a 1. Like,
right?
That might be being generous, because they have given you no reason to believe in what's going to happen. And it's a shame to say, because I know I bought into it when they went after Harper. I bought into it that things were finally going to change, and then they quickly went back to the old ways. So, in short, I'll give it a 1.
Yeah, I think that is an incredibly accurate, borderline generous number on that 0 to 10 scale. But let's get into some Bryce Harper things. Before we do, I want to remind everyone, and this is something that despite a new kind of skeleton show format here, we're going to keep in, is Just Food. Visit our guy Asian Rob over there. Ask him for literally anything. They have stayed open through the entire pandemic at this point. They have been helping feed families all across the Bucks County area. They've lessened some of their prices to make things incredibly reasonable and more family-sized portions. They're also doing these awesome kind of dinner boxes, but they'll sell like TV dinners, but they're like excellent, borderline gourmet food for a really reasonable price. And you can get as many as you need. They are seemingly out of stock never. It's amazing for as much business as they do. But visit our guy Asian Rob over there at Just Foods, 215-794-FOOD, 215-794-3663. Treat yourself, take it home. Now, we're talking about Bryce Harper and how you believed that things were going to change because we brought in Bryce Harper. We got the guy. We got our guy. For 5 years, the Philadelphia Phillies and many organizations in baseball were circling the year that Bryce Harper was going to become eligible for free agency, and were they going to get the face of baseball in their city and in their uniform. And we did. And we had every right to believe that 2 years ago, that this is the direction that we were going, that we could be positive now. Bryce Harper believed in that because he signed here. $330 million, 13 years. At that point, it was going to be, he signed up for 50% of his life capacity to that point to be in Philadelphia, to play for John Middleton, to play for a coach who was fired, a GM who was fired. Unbelievable what is going on. Now, Bryce Harper, a guy who has been fairly outspoken throughout much of his Washington days, has become very outspoken in the respect of signing JT Realmuto. I'm curious as to just how far he's willing to let this relationship go, or if he would begin to start that conversation. And we're not going to go to full negative pod here and doomsday scenario of Bryce Harper's out this offseason. That's not what we're saying. But at a certain point, how concerned are you with the way that Bryce Harper is beginning to view the relationship with the Phillies? And if there's maybe a bit of regret in the signing and decision to come here?
Yeah, I think Harper's in a very tough spot because he obviously, you saw the dismantle that started happening in Washington, and everyone kind of figured unless they offer him a huge contract, he's going to leave, which obviously ended up happening. And now he's had a whole new front office come after him. He had between the Phillies and the Giants, basically, what it came down to. And I think he clearly picked the Philadelphia because of the fans here, because of what they kind of told him. But mainly, I really think it was the fans and what he could build start his family here and everything, and get a whole new start in baseball. And with the fans, he wanted to play for a fan-heavy organization, and he sees that. And I think that's why he's in a tough spot. Is because he doesn't. I know he doesn't. Well, it's tough to say. I know, but it sounds like we know that he wants to do anything he can for this city to get us a championship. But yes, he can only do so much, as you see with Mike Trout and other stars. And he's in a spot now where he's going to eventually have to pick: do I stay here because of the fans, or do I kind of make that change? And it's a tough spot to be in because it kind of reminds you. I don't know. Maybe I'm going overboard here. I was younger at the time.
Are you about to say Jimmy Butler?
No.
Okay.
Well, that's not a bad one either.
I was just curious because I had that conversation earlier.
That's not a bad one, but I was gonna go older and keep it with the Phillies. I was kind of younger, so I'm going off what I basically read. But Scott Rowland's situation is You had an upcoming star, and I think they traded him in 2002. Correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. But he was run rookie of the year in 97, so he gave it 5 years, and he realized, okay, they're not doing anything to get to that next level and win. So I want to go somewhere to win. Well, and you mentioned it. We're 2 years within Harper, and how long does he give it? So honestly, I don't know if we can say he regrets signing with us because he kind of knew he wanted to come in with a fan base. But I'm concerned is his frustration's growing day by day with this organization. Because they won. I mean, as much as we get frustrated and they lied to us, they clearly lied to Harper because he's come out and said that he was told that they were going to do what it takes to. And that was one of the things he said in his opening press conference was, we're in it to win. They showed it by signing me here. They said they're going to go after others, and they didn't. Theoretically, they didn't. And so they lied to him now. They lied to the fans. At some point, I mean, if we had a boss that was lying to us the whole time, we'd get frustrated with it. So we'll see how long he can go for. And the other thing would be, I think a situation here is, especially if you lose JT in this situation, Harper's clearly a big fan of, you're going to frustrate him even more in that sense because he knows what you're losing. He knows it. He said it. He's the best catcher in baseball, how much he's helped the team on and off the field. And I don't want to go on to a different player, but imagine, and this is, sorry, you said not to go to Doomsday, but.
No, you're good.
You have the Harper situation. He kind of gets frustrated and not necessarily wants out, but starts something with the front office. Your acquisition last year, who came out and said one of the main reasons why he signed here and Zach Wheeler was because of JT, and now you could be possibly facing, and I know he had a really good year, but two of your best players in Harper and Wheeler wanting out potentially, and that's a situation you want to avoid. You want to make Harper happy. So I think he's starting to question the front office more than regret signing with the city, because I think he really wanted to embrace the city with everything he's done and enjoys the city overall. So I think it's more the frustration. And my question would be, how long does he give it before he starts making noise to the front office?
Yeah, and I think it's a fair assessment and a fair way to say that. When writing out these notes, believed there's no way he doesn't regret signing here. But you're probably right. A lot of what brought him here, goes beyond the failures of what has happened in these first 2 years. This is an easy city to fall in love with. I know, obviously 2 guys from here, it's easy for us to say that. But it truly is. It's an amazing city. It's an incredibly passionate city, and especially when it comes to our sports. And you can feel that. Like, that energy is palpable. And I was there in his first game in a Phillies uniform opening day 2 years ago, and the energy there, palpable. You could tell that he felt that. And I do think that is something that you just don't get in every city in America and every city across baseball. However, not unlike what you said, winning is incredibly important to Bryce Harper. Loyalty and transparency appear to be incredibly important to Bryce Harper. If you're going to go out here and make the necessary moves to attract Bryce Harper to come here, to make your JT decision initially, you can't use a pandemic, and we'll get to this in just a moment, just before we close out. You can't use a pandemic to sit there and go from 100 to 0 in what you've promised, not just the city, but your superstar player, the guy that you're investing $330 million to. You can't just all of a sudden say, well, something happened, something, mind you, that every organization in baseball is dealing with. Something happened. We're not going to be able to do this anymore. I would be forcing my way out. And I'm a guy who I appreciate loyalty. I'm probably a bit of an emotional masochist in that respect. I'd want to stick some things out. I play for a team right now that is a fucking train wreck. We can't win close games. We never have, and we never will. But I stick around. But if I had the opportunity to go somewhere else, maybe you do. I think Bryce Harper will. And again, we're not doomsdaying it right now. We're just kind of calling this one as we see it. But last thing I want to hit on, and we have other things that we'll get into later in the week. But the last thing, and I was just curious, and I wanted to get your opinion. The Phillies seem to be using, so Major League Baseball as a whole last season used the pandemic to force the hand of all the changes they wanted to make for years. And they said, listen, if you want 60 games this year, this is the shit that you're going to have to do. We're incorporating the DH. We're going to the 3-batter minimum. We're doing all these different things that we wanted to get in. the Philadelphia Phillies doing the same thing right now, getting rid of these, been in the organization guys for a long time, getting rid of some scouting guys who have been here for a long time? Right now, it seems like they are making or allowing the pandemic and what awful thing is going on in this world right now be the excuse, be the wish that fathers the thought of all the cuts and the reductions that they're making. How much do you think that is the Philadelphia Phillies just being opportunistic of a really poor situation?
I think it absolutely is, and I'm gonna have a hard time believing anything else because one, I mean, we look around and we see other franchises keeping their scouts, and I know it's hard to keep 100%, but like for the majority,
Sure.
a lot of them have kept most of their scouts, have kept everything else in house, and went out and did some of the things, whether it was sign a guy or kind of help out their other workers there, the lower level, or not lower level, but the not as high workers that you don't see every day in the media. And for example, listening to Jim Salisbury and Corey Simon, they were talking about it. And look at the Kansas City Royals, a team with not much money compared to, especially the Phillies, but they found a way to move money around and keep everybody. Like I think they've had to maybe lay off a couple people, but in majority they haven't had to do much. So how's a small market team like them, who don't have nearly as much money as the Phillies do, how are they able to maneuver that money and keep guys in house and do everything with that, and frankly not have many changes? And I think it's a shame that, I mean, we talked about how bad it was with MLB. I mean, I think it's even more a shame to see a franchise do it with what's at stake. I mean, they're talking about people's jobs. I mean, at least with MLB, you're just talking about a couple rule changes here. What the Phillies are doing here with people's lives. I mean, the way you kind of turn over some of those jobs, that could be the difference. And I mean, that's people's families you're affecting. That's someone's actual life you're affecting. And it's crazy to see how they're willing to lay off on some of those lower level guys to save some money, but then keep other guys in house and not kind of direct that money. Like, and you see it in other sports. In NFL, you get to restructure contracts a lot. Why don't they try that? Like, you can't tell me that nobody within the organization was going to be willing to restructure their contract. Yeah, every single person might not be for it, but you can't tell me if you went out and tried that every single person in there wasn't going to maybe help out and restructure something here or there. And that's where I just have a hard time believing that they actually did what it takes to kind of save some of that stuff. And they really look towards the virus to make excuses. And frankly, we hear it in their press conference. They flat out say it. So if they're going to use it for that, something big in terms of winning and bringing in a couple guys, I'm sure they're using it behind doors as well.
It's incredibly disappointing for a major market city such as this one, and for an owner worth billions. A conversation in a room that none of us, the average person, anyone outside of the 1%, can relate to. Maybe it's completely different for the 1% to take a look at that, and the hit to him is just too significant. Maybe the hit to him is like us taking a 60% takeaway from our salary to go ahead and do the same thing. I don't know. We will never know. But it's disappointing nevertheless. And the Royals thing, several other organizations have come out and said the exact same thing, that they are doing everything that they can to keep all those employed, whatever it is that is going to take. And you have to respect that. And for teams to go out there and say, listen, I know that we're amidst a pandemic right now and uncertain times, and we don't know where the money's going to come, but we have to trust that winning will cure it, and that making the right decisions for our franchise will continue to put us in a path over time to make that money back and then some. So many other organizations in baseball are betting on just that. The Dodgers signing Mookie Betts are doing just that. Anyone that goes out there and signs the Trevor Bauers, that trades for the Francisco Lindors and extends him, anyone who does those things, they are betting on their team. They're betting on their organization to come out of this COVID period and the time that all of baseball is going to go through, and that they're going to be a profitable organization once again. Right now, the Philadelphia Phillies seem to have no interest in that, nor do they have any belief in that. And it's tough as fans for us to go in there and say that we should exercise that belief for them. But we have, go ahead.
Sorry, one last thing. I think that kind of goes back to what we mentioned with the problem in-house with McPhail not being 100% in with the organization, because you see, I mean, you just mentioned the Betts contract, so let me stick with that, and you see how creative they were, because they're all in on making things work, and you see the Royals, they're all in on making things work and moving things around, and it's a big thing with creativity, and I mean, we know it. I mean, nothing in terms of running a franchise, but and other things we do with our everyday life. If you're not 100% into something, you're not going to put all your effort into it, and you're going to slack off basically with it. So if McPhail's not going to be 100% in, it's going to affect everybody in the room, let alone not having that creativity to make things work. And I think that's something they really lacked during this virus.
That's 100% accurate. If you're not in something 100% and it impacts a mass of people at a certain point, whomever cuts your check should be removing you from your position. And if that person has not, you should remove yourself. So Andy McPhail, resign. Just resign. The intention of these new shows are to go a shorter amount of time. We went 35 minutes tonight. It'll end up being around 37 minutes tonight with the intro outro music, which comes to you by the Jackdolls. It's www.thejackdolls.com. They have begun to do live shows again. They are still doing their social media shows and quote unquote live events that way, so you can support them any way that you can. You can do that through their Patreon, which is www.patreon.com/thejackdolls. And on that note, Andrew, do you have any final thoughts for the Chasing the Pennant listeners?
Just stay with the organization. Hopefully we can pray that something good happens, and sign JT, as Biscuit would say.
Biscuit and Rob also on an earlier side show this morning. I think both of our shows will come out in the next 48 hours. So you may get doubled up CTPs. And my final thought is just remember the number 1, because that was the number that Andrew and I both were at on a scale of 1 to 10. And that is absolutely embarrassing and a bit frightening. But we will be back later in the week. Mercifully, Chasing the Pennant has returned. So for Andrew, I am Shane signing off, and we will see you guys in a few days.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me solid through and through, danced a jig over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.